All right, name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. All right, so I have a very controversial topic for you guys today. This is not very controversial, actually. So the idea of this talk came from a guy named St. John Cassian. Has anyone heard of this guy? So he was this guy in the 4th century. He was from Europe. And he came down to Egypt and Syria, and he would interview monks. And he'd have these long discussions with monks. And he wrote these book called The Conferences, which are just long discussions with these monks. And because of the way he wrote, because he was Western, it grabs you, because he actually wrote well, right? And he wrote really nicely and thoughtfully. And so he wrote this one on the love or fear of God. And so I think in whatever we called it, the 3 stages of, what did we call it?
The 3 steps of love.
3 steps of love, okay? So I kind of want to go through this because I think it's important, because as youth, but more so than just being youth, as a Coptic youth and Copts who are the sons of immigrants, some of us, there's something I feel that's missing in our transition, and I want to kind of point it out a little bit. So, he focuses on this verse in 1 Corinthians 13, faith, hope, and love, right? And St. Paul says there's faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. Okay. So what St. John Cassian says is, okay, we're going to take these 3 words and we're going to break them down. Faith, hope, love, right? So he starts with faith. And he says, faith is the beginning. And basically, faith means I believe in God. I believe in heaven and hell. I believe that if I'm bad, I will be punished, and there's some eternal punishment, whatever, right? And this is how many people start their walk with God, right? Some kind of fear of punishment, right? I don't want to go to hell. And if you think about even parenting, right? So when Jesus said to his disciples, call me dad, right? He said, so when you pray, say our Father. It created a model, right? A relationship. Now, I'm not talking about dads in America in the last 20, 30 years. I'm thinking about dads, okay? When you think about dads, right? What are dads like, right? Well, I mean, they're usually the ones who punish, right? And they're the ones who are, wait till dad gets home, and that sort of thing. And they're the whatever, right? They can be scary and they can be all these things. And if you think about your relationship with your dad, it evolves over time, okay? And so what he wants to do is he wanted to model this relationship with our dad in the relationship with God. And so he said the first level is faith, which means a punishment, a fear of punishment, okay? And if you think about it, when you're young, right, there was punishment, right? This is Miramar, right? You guys are used to this. I love this sound. Like, I love these things. When they fly by, it's like, America. Yeah, one time I was at one of these air shows, and just they buzzed us, and it was so loud, and the guy next to me goes, that's the sound of freedom. I go, yeah, baby. America. White power. All right, so you want controversy? There it is. Right, so the first is this idea of fear of punishment, okay? And obviously when we're young, right, and we do something wrong, our parents are going to ground us, they're going to take away our phone, they're going to spank us, right? That's what happened when you're young. There was some kind of punishment, okay? And we can imagine that that people can become Christians because they're afraid of punishment, right? And that's kind of the first step. But it's kind of a juvenile step, right? I mean, you don't punish a kid after, 5, 6, 7, right? No, I mean, you certainly don't spank a kid after 3 or 4, right? And after a certain age, 10, 11, you don't punish kids after they're 10 or 11, right? It's not very effective. And when I was in college, when I was your age, there's the guys who, had the Bibles and the signs and the microphone, right? And they would yell at you as you walked by, right? I mean, at my school, they used to call us whoremongers and wine bibbers, and you're all going to go to hell. And they're just trying to go for shock, right? They're trying to get your attention. And unfortunately, a lot of people never leave this stage in Christianity, right? And if you think about it, it's a horrible thing, right? Because your view of your father at that age is he's the guy who punishes me, right? He's the guy, wait till dad gets home, and he's going to punish you, right? And he's the bad guy, right? And imagine living your life at that stage, right? Never getting to know your dad, never hearing them tell a joke, never realizing they're a person, never watching them cry, never seeing your dad do all of the things that human beings do, right? That isn't a relationship, right? That's just fear, okay? And if you think about our concept of hell, right? And we have to sort of examine what that is, right? And think about what hell is. And what does it mean? So Jesus said that hell was created not for humans, but for the demons, right? And that ultimately we as people sort of choose hell, right? Hell isn't a place where God sends you, right? Because you've been bad, right? Hell isn't a place, and some people say that where God doesn't exist, or there is no God in hell, or God isn't there, right? Because God's everywhere, isn't he? Right? So God's in hell, and God's love. So God's in hell, next to you, and he's love, right? And so you're wondering, well, then what is hell then, right? And when we think about hell as punishment, right, as straight punishment for being bad, think about what that entails, right? Imagine, you're bad, okay? I smoke shisha, okay? Real bad, okay? Like the worst thing ever. And God goes, you smoke shisha? Definitely going to go to hell, right? That's just the Hell Express. Or if you're a woman, you wear a dress that goes here and not here, right? Because this is heaven, this is hell, right? We all know that, okay? So God's going to send you to hell, right? You smoke shisha, you're, whatever. And so think about what that means, right? So I'm bad for 20 years, okay? And then God says, all right, you bad for 20 years? I'm going to send you hell for eternity. And I'm going to burn you forever. How long? Forever. Is that nice? Does that sound fair? All right, imagine I have a dog, he pees on the rug. Right, my freaking dog, right? So I take a newspaper, I smack his butt, and I say, don't pee on the rug. Right, dog's stupid. He pees on the rug next time, right? I smack him on his butt. He's not getting it. Right, so eventually I say, yeah, this dog, we can't train him for the house. We're just going to put him outside. Right, he's going to be outside dog. Right, so he stays outside all the time. Dog doesn't come in the house. Deal. So I go outside, I see the dog, he's outside. What do? Take a newspaper, I hit him. He goes, why are you hitting me? I said, because you peed on the rug. He goes, I peed on the rug last week. He's like, yeah, I'm just going to hit. There it is again. And then, how long are you going to keep hitting me? Forever. Why? Because you peed on the rug, like 37 years ago. And I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to keep hitting you. I'm going to keep punishing you because you did something bad. Fair? Smart? Make sense? Right? So punishment by its nature is a corrective action. Right? When I hit the dog on his butt, I only have one objective. Don't pee on the rug anymore, right? So if I'm going to punish my child, I don't punish him out of spite or out of revenge or out of anger or out of vengeance, right? That's not nice, right? Is that Sophie?
Hi.
Habibti.
Hi.
How are you?
I have to surprise you. I'm good. Why do you have a child?
Are you questioning my choices? All right. You just leave. All right. Is it because I'm a man? All right, there it is. There it is. Yeah. All right, so. And so imagine that scenario, right? So I'm bad, right? And so God says, I'm going to send you to hell forever, and I'm going to keep punishing you even after you can't change. You're like, okay, well, I'm done. I'm done being bad. I want to be good now. Sorry, too late. It's over. I'm going to keep sending you to hell. I'm going to keep burning you.
Why does hell exist then?
Huh? Well, we'll get there. Right? Yeah. So think about this scenario, right? So now when I say Jesus is my Savior, who's he saving me? How you doing? Who's Jesus saving me from? From God, right? So at this point, who's the scariest guy you got to worry about at this point? you got to worry about God, right? Because he's the guy who's going to send you to hell forever. And he can see you no matter where you are. So now you're screwed, right? So that scenario doesn't sound appealing, right? In fact, if this was the kind of God, vengeful God that we had, and he was actually like this, who kept hitting a dog after the dog was outside of the house forever, I don't know that I'd want to be with that God for eternity, right? In fact, the person who's acting really good so he can go to heaven, you have to ask yourself, why are you acting good? Is it because you love God, or is it because you love yourself? And I don't want to go to hell, right? And I'm scared of hell. So when you stay at this level, right? And by the way, this is, there's a lot of Islam here, right? At this level, right? There's a lot of, God kills the infidels, right? And that's sort of the thinking, right? This is what you do, okay? And this is a very base kind of Christianity. And unfortunately, a lot of people never get past that, right? A lot of people, they don't grow in that relationship. They just stay at that level. And then they pass it on to their kids. And they say, God's going to send you to hell if you keep doing that. And that's the depiction of God that people are giving to their children. God's the hell guy, right? And people do this with priests, right? They go, Abuna is going to be very upset with you. Abuna hezal minnak, right? For those who understand Arabic, right? And they say that, God, God's going to be very upset with you. Or worse, something bad happens to you. You lose something, right? And your mom says, see, that's what happens when you disobey me. See what God did to you? And you're like, wow. So now she's using God as a weapon against you to control you by telling you that if you don't listen to her, God, who watches everything, he's got like a drone thing, right? He's watching, and if you don't listen to obey her, God will punish you in the depths. So she's using God to get her way.
Smart.
It's a good move. I would do the same. Checkmates. Right? I got a guy backing me. He's the man. Right? So when we reduce God to this level, right, it's kind of, and if that's the case, right, then the devil is kind of like a subcontractor to God, right? So, so you're bad, and then God says, all right, I'm going to send you the devil. Devil works for me, and I'm going to send him, I pay what, $30 a soul, right? And he tortures you forever, and now the devil works for me, and he's kind of a sub. And if and the things I'm saying, right, I'm saying them in a very funny way, obviously, right? But they sound very consistent with some of the things we've heard, right? And there we've reduced this relationship, this father-son relationship, into, an abusive dad who beats his 3-year-old or beats a puppy, long after the puppy no longer pees on the rug, right? And that's not our father. That's not a fatherly relationship, right? That's a slave owner relationship, right? You do what I say, because if you don't do it, I'm going to beat you. I'm going to torture you, right? And that's how, in the history of this country, right? That's how we controlled slaves. That they controlled slaves, not we. I was never that. We controlled the Jew slaves, but that's a different story. That was like 5,000 years ago. That doesn't count, right? So when we controlled the Jews, that's what we did, right? You don't obey, we beat you, right? And that's the level of faith. That's the beginning, right? And we have to move past that, right? So at least I got. And so what this creates is what I call the minimalist Christian, right? Sorry, I wrote this in 1990, so it's a little old. This creates the minimalist Christian, right? What do I got to do to go to heaven? Right? What do I got to do? How many days do I have to fast? How many times do I have to go to church? And the only thing I'm trying to do is stay out of hell. Right? What do I got to do to stay out of hell? Just give me the minimum, right? Don't make it hard. How long I got to be there, right? When I was in college, I was talking to this Protestant guy. I used to argue with Protestants in college just for kind of sport thing. And this one guy, he's like, I'm sure they see the Bible, so we're arguing. I used to do this sort of thing, right? And now I realize it's stupid, but I did it. And so at the very end of reading the Bible, I kissed the Bible. And he goes, why'd you kiss the Bible? You can go to hell if you don't kiss the Bible? And I'm like, no. And then, I had a cross hanging in my mirror, and he goes, why do you have a cross? You going to go to hell if you don't have a cross? I'm like, probably not. And no matter what I did, he would say, why you do that? You're going to go to hell if you don't do that? And so his thinking was, are you kissing it so you don't go to hell? I'm like, no, that's not it at all. Like, there's more to it than that. But we can create that kind of minimalist Christian in our churches, right? Because we're just focusing on hell. And as long as you have fear, the fear can control a person, right? Fear is the best way to control another person, right? And we just keep the fear going, right? As long as there's a fear, all the people act, all the kids, all the youth act the way we want them to act, right? And we just use fear. And as long as the fear is there, it works. But then once the fear is gone, forget it, right? And how do you turn off the fear? You become an atheist, right? You say, I don't believe in God. Your God's stupid. I'm done. I'm done with your church. I just won't go. I won't listen to the crap you say to me anymore. I won't let you control me anymore. Boom. God's gone. Right? And there's a lot of people who tell you atheism isn't, I don't believe in God. It's, I hate God. Right? Because when you talk to an atheist, they're not usually like, well, I don't know, it could be. No, they're like, you're an idiot if you believe in God. They're angry. And they're usually angry about something. And I've talked to many atheists. You start probing a little bit and they tell you, yeah, when I was 7, I prayed to God to save my grandmother and he didn't. And I prayed all night. And what kind of loving God will let her die like that? And there's a story usually, right? So the way we get our revenge against this kind of God, this hell God, is we become atheists. And we say, I don't have him. He can't hurt me anymore, right? He can't get to me. All right, so that's kind of the first level. But then, hopefully, we get out of that level, right? And as young people, we get out of that level, right? So kids grow up, right? And then their parents know they can't spank you anymore, right? They can't do stuff. So then they start offering things to you. Right? If you get straight A's, I'll get you an iPad. Right? If you do this, I'll buy you a car. If you get into this school, I'll get you whatever you want. Right? And they start enticing you, right? I'll give you not a stipend. What do you guys call it? Allowance, right? And I'll give you money, right? If you too many PhD things, right? Right. So you guys and your bad vocab, right? So I was at a meeting once at St. Paul's, and I was like talking about something, and I said, we'll just create an algorithm that like figures out. And they're like, ooh, algorithm, fancy word. And I'm like, is that not a word you people use? So I kind of lose track. All right, so, and so now we move into a reward system, right? And so I'm going to serve my dad, and I'm going to take out the trash because I know I get $20 at the end of the week for it. Right? There's something in it for me, right? And if you want to go from the slave, right? The slave moves to the hired hand, right? So now, you go work for Chick-fil-A, right? You don't go to work at Chick-fil-A because they're going to beat you if you don't work at Chick-fil-A, right? Because you're not a slave. You've moved on to something else. Just keep making noise. No, it's not bothering me. So you go to Chick-fil-A, right? Because you know I'm going to get a paycheck at the end of this, right? So now I'm going to serve God, right? I'll do all the things, but it's because I'm going to get heaven out of this, right? I want to go up to heaven. There's cotton candy and pearly gates and wings and naked babies, all kinds of things up in heaven.
Why is that
Naked babies? No, I mean, you've seen the Sistine Chapel? It's kind of freaky. All the angels are naked babies. They're naked babies.
They're cherubs.
Babies. Naked ones. Very freaky. Yeah, and they're all white. You know what I'm saying? My people aren't represented on the Sistine Chapel. Focus, people. Right, so...
Wait, if we get stuck in one of those two stages, it's still an acceptable way, right?
No, hey, Noah. What do you... all right, that's just... no, let me get to that. Okay. All right, so now I'm at Chick-fil-A and I'm working, right? I'm serving God because I'm going to get something. And I'm going to get heaven, or I'm going to get medical school, right? Or I'm going to get healthy babies, or I'm going to get a good husband or a good wife, or I'm going to, not get cancer, right? And people serve God because I get stuff from God, right? I mean, Look, finals week, liturgies are full of undergrads, right? Because God's that stupid, right? I'm going to show up, I'm going to go one liturgy, and God's going like, all right, he went to liturgy. Okay, give him an A. You know, that did it, right? And that's what you do. You manipulate God because he's not very bright, right? And he sees you, goes, oh, I never noticed you before. You must go to all the liturgies because that's how it works. I give points, and that's a 7-point liturgy. It was an hour and a half, but you know, right? So OChem, at least you're giving 85%, right? So that's not bad. That's really good. You got to go 2 liturgies. Anyway, so what are we talking about? So anyway, so this is the reward God, right? This is the vending machine God, as I often say, right? This is the cosmic vending machine. I put in a few tasbihas, a couple liturgies, right? And out comes the thing I need, right? I want a good relationship. I want a new car. I want a better job. I want to nail the MCAT, right? Whatever the thing is, I put in. I've asked all of Lent this year if you give me a good score, right? So we have a transactional God. No, keep playing with it. No, it's great. Oh, good. Yeah, you keep going. Get something louder. Maybe some with batteries that squeaks. You know, makes sound.
I pray for whoever listens to this recording.
It's recorded?
I'm recording it. So that way you guys can't say I said something controversial. All right. And so this is the reward God, all right? And this is, if you think about it, right, this is the way the prodigal son thought of his father, right? He said, how many of my hired servants, my dad's hired servants, have enough to eat, blah, 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 right? And so what he was saying, right, he knew that that's the level he had to come back at, right? So he left, he took half the money, hung out the hookers, right? And then he says, you know what, I'm no longer going to be a son. I'm going to go for that second rank, right? And he said that to his dad when he practiced it in his head. He said, make me as your hired servant, right? So I'm going to take the demotion, you know? I'll be that servant level. I know I forfeited son, right? And which means he didn't know his dad very well, right? Because his dad was just oozing love. I wish I could see what was happening. I can't read your watches, but I can try.
It's Noah.
It's Noah. Okay. All right. Is that what's happening? I'm a professor. I do this for a living, bro. I mean, I'm just looking at the watch. I'm trying to see who it is, and, you know, I'll figure this out. What'd he say? I don't want to know. No, I don't. You want me to throw this baby at you?
No, it was actually, I'll tell you after the meeting, so I'm embarrassed her publicly.
All right. I'll embarrass her privately. What's happening? Oh, my God.
It's nothing. That was just stupid.
Just bottom line.
All right, well, text me something. All right. Huh?
It's all recorded?
Yeah. It's not a good look.
Noah's super smart.
Noah's the best. Man, he's not an idiot. All right, so he wanted this demotion, right, to this hired hand. So sometimes we also get into the, you know, it's not that I'm afraid of hell, God, right? But it's the I really want a Mercedes, God, right? Or I really want medical school, or I really want a big house, or I really want to have a healthy, happy marriage. I don't want my kid to do drugs, so I'm going to go to all the liturgies so that my kid doesn't do drugs, right? And I'm going to buy good things, right, from God, which means I don't really want God. I want the stuff, right? I don't want Chick-fil-A. I don't like Chick-fil-A. I'm not a Chick-fil-A guy, but they give me a paycheck at the end of every 2 weeks, so I'll be the Chick-fil-A guy. I wear the stupid shirt. I'll say, welcome Chick-fil-A, and I'll smile at you, right? Not because I care, but because you give me a paycheck every 2 weeks, right? And we have Christians at that level, right? Very much, I'm going to do the thing, you do the thing, you give me what I need, and away we go, okay? And then, so that's faith. There's faith is the basic. Then hope, which is hope for a reward. And then final level, right, obviously is love, okay? And we have to push ourselves. And so to answer your question, Noah, no, the first 2 levels aren't Christianity.
They're not accepted?
No. And so even the question...
Like the Old Testament, though?
Yeah. Even the question, hey, Bishoy, how you doing, baby? So I didn't say anything controversial.
You said Noah was the best.
Noah's the best. That is controversial. No, I said Noah's not an idiot, which everyone's going to do. And so that question embeds in it what? Is that acceptable? Does that make the bar? Right? That you're at the, if I don't kiss the Bible, do I go to hell? Right? What do I got to do? Does that get me in?
Aren't there those stories like the monks that are doing like the bare minimum? There's like one monk like, oh, I never judged, so I'll never be judged.
Sure.
Isn't that doing the bare minimum? Not a...
No.
That's what God calls us.
So the monks thought he was doing the bare minimum, right? The monks thought, based on these first two things, right? They're like, well, you do this many matanyas, you do this many things, you do this many things, and then all, that's religion. And what God was trying to show them, that they were wrong, right? That doing those things aren't the things, right? It's the heart, right? God's looking for the heart. And so he brought this guy out, and we share that story over and over again, because some of the monks had gone a little off, right? They were focused too much on this other stuff and had judged him based on actions. All right, so the perfection of this is love, right? And you can imagine as a son, so now we're moving up, right? I'm a kid, right? I'm worried about getting spanked. I'm worried about getting punished, get my things away. And then the next level is, your mom or dad says, look, if you get straight A's, I'm going to buy you this, I'm going to buy you that, I'll get you in here, I'll do this for you, right? And that motivates you to go do all the good things. If you graduate college, I'll get you an apartment, right? It continues, okay? But then there's love, right? That's the kind of the final stage, right? So, I'm 50, right? 51, right? So when I go and my dad's, ailing and sick and I go over to help him, right? I'm not going because I'm afraid he's going to spank me, right? I'm not going because he's going to give me $20, right? I'm going because out of love, right? That relationship has matured, okay? I'm not afraid of him. He's not going to give me anything, right? But now I'm just going to, because his back hurts, right? And I'm starting to see that even in my own kids, right? Where all of a sudden I'm like, oh, my back. And then I'll see one of my kids jump up and go, okay, let me do it, right? And I'm like, oh, you care. That's really weird, right? I'm not used to that, okay? So the relationship transforms, right? And so those first two stages, and you can say, there's stages along the path. I think he was trying to make a point that those first two are just incomplete, right? And we can never say, well, is that good enough? Is that going to get me there? Don't ever get stuck there. That's not the faith we're called to have at all. Because Jesus said, call me dad, right? Call me father, right? Which is a very mature, loving relationship, right? Because when we're stuck in these other things, like we started talking about with hell and everything else, you get kind of stuck in this, is it all about hell? Is it all about heaven? Is it a reward system? Then what do I got to do, right? And so, okay. Okay, so as we move into this final stage, right, and we push ourselves past those other two, right, we start to see characteristics of this stage, okay? And I want to focus on something, which is when we see, when the Bible tells us, when Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God, right? What is he saying? What is he saying? When he told Peter said, how many times should I forgive? And he said, you should forgive 7 times enough. And Jesus said, no, 7 times 70. What's Jesus saying? Is Jesus saying you should forgive someone 7 times 70? Is he saying you should be a peacemaker? Or is he saying, I'm a peacemaker? I mean, if you look at the Beatitudes, right? Blessed are the meek, blessed are the humble, blessed are the peacemakers, blessed are the persecuted for righteousness' sake. Who does that sound like? Jesus. He's talking about himself. So he's saying, I'm your dad, and this is who I am. Right? How many times should I forgive? How many times do I forgive? I'm not going to tell you, because Christianity is a religion of freedom, I'm not going to tell you to forgive anyone, ever. Because if I tell you to forgive them, and you do, then what? You didn't forgive them. You faked it, right? If I force you to forgive, and I tell you better forgive someone, that's the Christian thing to do. You should forgive someone. All right, fine, I'll forgive them. No, you didn't. You didn't forgive them. You just stopped being pissed. Or you're not going to talk to me about it. What's the heart? Same. Right? It's kind of like saying, you need to be humble. Okay, I'll be humble. I have to be humble. Must be humble. Then you ain't humble, right? If you have to say that. Right? So that isn't the point. The point isn't to do anything. Jesus isn't saying do those things. He's saying what? I am those things. And I'm your dad. You figure it out. Right? So how many times should I forgive? I'll tell you how many times I forgive. Right? And that's something you can imagine your parents saying to you. When if my son doesn't want to do something and, I ask him to do something, I may say, I did this for you. Right? I'm not going to tell you to do it, but I'm going to tell you I did it for you many times. And that's all I'm going to say. You figure it out. Right? And so when these things are put before us, we can't look at them as orders or commands or moralistic codes that we live by. And if we live by these moralistic codes, then God checks the boxes and says, yeah, you're going to get to go to heaven because you did all the things. Right? Because that's very Islamic and Jewish. Right? Do the things, go to heaven. Right? In Islam, you have the 5 tenets of Islam. Right? You do the 5 things. And it stayed like that. Do the 5 things. And you go to heaven. That's the deal. Right? That's what it says in the textbooks. Okay? So that's not the way we live our life, right? God says, this is who I am. I'm your dad. Right? Have you adopted my characteristics? Do you have my personality? Do you think like I do? Do you act like I do? Are you tender like I am? So when Jesus says, when Jesus said, we should have mercy on a sinner, right? He's not saying you should have mercy on a sinner. He's saying, I have mercy on a sinner. Right? So, and how does he do that? He says, I'm going to tell you a story about a dad and his son, the prodigal son. You're really going to keep going now, aren't you? Good God, man. You want to send another text? So, that's Noah Nation, by the way. Lives at 722. Okay.
Mine actually is 666. I'm not even joking.
Is it really?
666.
That makes a lot of freaking sense right now.
You haven't inspired yet?
What was I even saying?
You were talking about the prodigal son.
It's such a good point, too. It's gone. Thanks, No Neshit. Good point, gone.
The prodigal son.
Yeah, I know. I had something I was going to say.
God gave the story of the prodigal son.
Yeah, so God gives the story of the prodigal son not to tell us to do those things necessarily, right? But to say, this is the way I am, right? And if someone who is a sinner comes back to me, this is how I act, right? And there's so much beauty and subtlety in that story. I was just talking with someone the other day, and like one of the things, you ever been outside in the heat, it's hot, you're sweating, right? Your neck's gross, right? You're sweating, and someone goes to hug you, right? And then they touch your neck, and you're like, oh, I'm sweaty, don't touch me there, I'm gross, right? Everyone know this experience, right? So when you're walking, right, and you've been walking for a while, you get sweaty on your neck, right? Now think of the story, right? The father, when he met his son, what did he do?
Embraced him.
Before, he fell on his neck and he kissed him on his neck. He kissed the grossest part. He kissed the dirtiest, the part his son was probably ashamed of and like, no, I'm gross. He said, no, Habibi, that's the part I'll kiss, right? And we have this instinct even as humans, right? Because God's our father, right? You ever see, God forbid, right? A woman has some, degenerative disease on her cheek, right? And her cheek gets really ugly and the skin gets all messed up. And she's like, oh, I'm so ugly and this is horrible, right? And the husband goes and he kisses her cheek. He said, I'm going to kiss the ugliest part on you, right? That's the tenderness of God, right? So so God tells us these stories. And he's not saying you got to do this or I'm going to send you to hell, right? He's saying this is who I am. And if you become my son, then you're going to act like me, right? And that's what we see, right? All of you are starting, God forbid, to act like your parents, right? And every once in a while, it's going to happen. It's so going to happen. And every once in a while, you'll slip and you'll say something, oh my God, that sounded like my mom. That sounded like my dad. Freaking A. I swore I'd never be like them. They're the stupidest, idiotic people. They're 51. They're just retards, right? But I'm turning out just like them. Sucks. Right? And you have nowhere to go. You have nowhere to hide. And it just gets worse, right? And wait till you have kids. It's all over. You're going to be saying the same things, doing the same stuff. And you just, I swore I'd never do these things. And here I am doing all of them. Right? Well, what's happening, right? Well, when you're born, you're in the image of your parents, right? They look at you like, oh, she has my ear. Oh, he has your nose, blah, blah, blah. And the parents are all like, look how cute, right? All this stuff, right? But then as you get older, right, you go from image to likeness, right? You start to talk like your parents. You tell jokes like your parents. You tell the same stories like your parents. You think like your parents, right? You approach problems like your parents, right? Often now, and I'll never tell them because I don't want them to stop. Every once in a while, something will happen and I will think something and, on a stack of Bibles, one of my sons says exactly what I would have said. Like, to the letter. And I'm like, yeah, I did that. Dang, right? And I'm not saying I'm right or I'm good, but they're me. And that makes me happy, right? Or they'll tell a joke and I'll think the joke and then they'll tell that joke. And I'm like, yes, I did that, right? So, I'm right? So that's a beautiful thing. But that instinct is in us. Right? In fact, they always talk about painters, right? You study painters, the Michelangelos and all these guys, right, of old. And one of the things that kind of comes through when people paint a lot of faces is usually in the face of in all the paintings there is a consistency, right? In an artist's work, and often that consistency is what? The artist's face. Right? Because in the end, because the face you see the most is your own face, right? And so a lot of times people will start to paint themselves, right? That's the way artists do it. Okay? And so when we create, we end up as parents, and you're going to do the same thing, right? You're going to end up making your kids, like you. And how are you going to do that? Well, because when they do something wrong, bad, you say, don't do that, right? And what's the definition of wrong and bad? Habibi's. He's been at the gym. He's tired. Right? So what's the definition of wrong? When a parent says, don't do that, it's wrong. All right, see you.
It's a great lecture.
I'm not in professor mode. I'm in clergy mode, bro. Why does a parent say, don't do that? What's a parent really saying?
I wouldn't do that.
I wouldn't do that. And when a parent says, good job, you did great, what is the parent really saying? That's exactly what I would have done, right? So it's not necessarily objectively good or bad. It's just objectively consistent with themselves. So what are parents doing? They're making you into them, right? And that happens, and you can't stop it. So...
Wait, but if we acknowledge and see our parents' flaws, we can prevent ourselves.
First of all, parents don't have flaws. Let's put it out there right now. Especially archdeacons above the cherubim. Glory be to their names.
Intercessions of archdeacons.
Yeah, other than archdeacons. All right, yeah, continue as you were.
Like we can work on
You don't have a chance, bro.
Because even though
you're gonna die in your sins.
Flaws that I know that my parents have, and then I'll see myself doing it, and I get so mad.
Yeah.
Because so how do I?
Okay, so this is actually a very good question, which is, can you break the cycle of Egyptian parenting, right? And the answer is yes, absolutely.
Oh, there's hope.
There's hope, right? It's not going to be easy, right? But there's other things I want to say that I really shouldn't say, as if like all the things I've said, right? We're not.
What happens in this?
No. What happens now? No, but I think you absolutely can. In fact, you absolutely should, right? Because we are called. What's that?
Nothing.
We're called to be He said something good. What'd you
No,
say?
he didn't. He
No,
didn't.
but I think I know what he was hinting at.
No, what?
When
Just
you're
play
talking, I think that you shouldn't say that.
Oh, yeah. Like, people were like, oh, you're nothing like your mom. I'm like, thank God. Right? So we're called to be better than our parents, right? We're called to see these things, and every generation, God willing, right, it hopefully picks up something and stops it, right? So you can be. I'm just giving you the most negative base case, right? Because you're probably going to be like, unless you actively, address, recognize, but it's hard. It'll be kind of in your DNA, I mean, I'll just be blunt, right? You know me, right? I mean, I know people, they lie. They're liars, right? And their kids, liars, And I have no problem just kind of seeing that, because I know the guy, I know him very well. I've known him for years, and he lies often, right? And his kid is now a liar because his kid watches his dad lie all the time, right? And so, I see the kid, I'm like, I kind of know already what his character, and so that kid's got to work extra hard, right? Because he's got this model in front of him. But yeah, it can be done. You can't, but other people can.
So there's hope for Justin.
وسخ انت. All right, I can stop there. Did anybody have any questions or anything to add or comments, thoughts? Yes.
So, would you say that, if somebody is donating to the poor just for the sake of, tax write-off, or people will like me or whatever, their intentions aren't pure, is that not a good deed?
No, I mean, it's better than not. Yeah. But what you don't want to be is delusional, right? And we can get really delusional quick in the church, right? I mean, I can be doing something purely out of ego, right? I can be, serving Sunday school out of ego. I can be a deacon out of ego. I can be giving to the poor out of ego. I can be contributing to the church out of ego. I can be, a clergy out of ego, right? Easy, okay? And that happens, and we see it happen. And we're all humans, and we do stupid things like that all the time, right? And the key is not to let yourself succumb to that, right? To catch it, and you have to have honest conversations with yourself. Like, why did I do that? Why did I go to the soup kitchen? Why did I, you see it, we'll be at a soup kitchen and everyone's taking selfies and posting. Oh, we went to the soup kitchen and, helped out these poor people and I met them and they're really great. And everyone's like, oh, you're so amazing. Like, no, I'm not, and you're like, all right, so, and I think you guys call it humble brag, right? Where, you're basically pretending, right? Not, yeah, exactly, yeah. Anna did that to me the other day. She's like,
I told you she's the smartest one in your family.
She is. Yeah, she's like, yeah, I said something. I said a compliment to her, and then she's what's a good thing? I like that. Yeah, that's it. Anyway, so what am I talking about? So anyway, so that's something you have to be aware of, right? And it's easy to fall into, right? And we see it in other people very easily, right? There's lots of people at the church. You see them, and they're doing things, But God in His love, right? What He'll do, right? If someone's out there and they're serving and they're, in their position of power, blah blah blah, He'll send them a priest who'll be abrasive, right? And the priest will say, you know what, we're not going to do it the way you want to do it, okay? Now, if you don't have ego, you're going to say, okay, whatever's best for the church. But that's not what's said, is it? It's like, what? After everything I've done for this church, after how much money I've given, how much I've served for the church, how much right? And all of a sudden, oh, I get it. You're not really in it for the whole God thing, right? You're in it for the me thing, And so God will send us these things to help purify us a little bit. And then you kind of step back, people look at you funny, and you're like, oh, I think I'm out of line. Gee, what's going on? Why am I acting? Why am I upset? And I'm upset because I wasn't really doing it out of purity of heart, And in every relationship, this happens, right? So, in a marriage relationship, right? I mean, in the beginning of marriage, yeah, it's lovey-dovey, I love you, you're the best, right? And then after a while, right, 5 weeks, that's over, right? And then you're like, okay, that sucked what you did, right? And And then it comes out, right? Someone says something like, oh, really? After I did this and this and this and this and this, now you're going to talk to me like that? I was like, oh, so when you did all those things, that wasn't unconditional love. That was conditional love, right? I'm going to do those things if you reciprocate. But if you don't reciprocate, then I'm not going to do those things, right? So it's not unconditional. And then you step back and you're like, oh, shoot, I'm not an unconditional kind of guy. I'm a conditional kind of guy, and that's not the kind of guy I need to be, or girl, right? So, yes?
Oh, exactly. Earlier this week I was talking with somebody too, and she blew my mind. She was telling me about, like, her talking to someone that was Muslim, and he was, like, evangelizing pretty much, and she asked him, well, how would you be saved? Like, how are you saved? And it goes back to, like, the level 1. And I didn't think about it this way, but it's like, sometimes you think, oh, well, everything I'm doing is pretty good. Like, 8 out of 10. Like, I could argue that, you know, I deserve heaven or whatever, because that's a lot of, like, the Islamic belief. And she was saying, like, the level of even one sin is, like, massive difference, because you're arguing with perfection. And like, she put it into scale, and she was like, if you lie as a little kid, like, lying isn't that bad, and your parents probably won't get that mad at you if you lie. And then if you lie to your friend, there's a little tension. And then if you lie to your parents, you get in trouble. If you lie to your boss, you get fired. If you lie to the priest, they could get, like, whatever. And she was saying the sin didn't change, but it was the authority that changed. And so the gap between you and God is, like, massive. And so the fact that you're lying to him and, like, you're not getting fired, you're getting, like, you're done. And that's just one sin, and that's not, like, to us, sin is sin, but it's not, like, the biggest sin in the world for us, or for society. So it was like, dang, like, so pretty much her argument was is that if you're breaking that big of a gap with a sin, then you are condemned because you deserve that. And she was saying that, and so then, like, the Islamic man was like, well, God's loving and he's merciful and he's graceful, and that's also who God is. And she's like, yeah, but he's just, and he's going to condemn you to what you deserve, and that's the point of Jesus and the cross. And so it was really, like, eye-opening for me, because I was like that, I didn't realize or, like, see that big of a jump. And so it's really important that we really respect and, like, honor that the grace that God has given us, and the mercy of Jesus, because we don't deserve heaven at all.
Yeah, and I think that also is, you're right. And I think sometimes as Orthodox, and I think this is actually what's coming out of that story that Noah talked about, as Orthodox, sometimes because we have so many things to do, that we think the things we do are the things that get us to heaven, right? And that's dangerous, you know. The liturgies, by attending liturgy, or by doing these fastings or matanyas or Agbeya prayers, and somehow I'm earning heaven, right? And, you know, that's blasphemous, you know, there's just a lack of a better word, right? I mean, like you said, right, no one deserves heaven, right? And St. Paul says, no one is good, no, not one, right? So, unfortunately, sometimes we get into the religion of being good, right? And that's what religion is about. It's about being moral or doing good things. And good people don't do the bad things, right? But of course, we know that we all do, right? And that we all fall, and that we all fall short of the glory of God, right? And so sometimes, you know, when you're into this, stage 1 or stage 2, you're like, well, I need to do these things so I don't go to hell. So somehow doing these things has saved me, not God, right? And I've cut him out of the picture. I just got to stop watching porn, right? And that's it, you know? And then I just saved myself, right? And I've cut God out of it, you know, at some level. Or I just have to, you know, give more money to the poor, and then I'm going to go to heaven. So I just bought heaven, right, by giving money. right? I'll give my time, and that'll buy heaven, right? What about my relationship with my dad? And that's the goal, right? That always is the goal, And when we reduce God to something so primitive, then you can't have that relationship, I mean, the way I always think about the relationship with God is I was in Cancun last year, and I was watching the sunset. I don't know why I had this thought when I was there, and I was watching the sunset, and the sun was just looking right back at me, and you just had this moment where just me and the sun, right? And I could swear that the sun was looking at me. In fact, if I went left or right, the sun moved. Okay? And intellectually, I knew that there were probably other people on the beach who were watching the sunset and had the same relationship with the sunset that I was having. Right? I was pretty sure there's someone else watching the same sunset. But emotionally, I didn't feel that. I felt like it was just me and the sun. Right? And I wondered if this is our relationship with God. My relationship with God has to be that personal. It's just me and him. Right? And intellectually, I'm sure other people have relationships with God, but I don't know. It doesn't feel that way. It feels like it's just me and him, right? And that's the kind of father-son relationship, right? Where you feel like I'm the only one, right? I'm it, And it isn't about, moving forward to your thing. It's about disappointing the dad I love. Because, when I lie to my dad when I'm little that I stole a cookie, right? And who took the cookie out of the jar? Not me. And then you lie, then you cry, right? That's one thing, okay? But when you're 40, right? And your dad asks you something and then you lie to your dad. And he looks at you and goes, why'd you lie to me? You got divorced and you didn't even tell me? And you said everything's fine and I'm your dad. Why wouldn't you tell me? Why wouldn't you talk to me? And now your dad looks at you and is like, why would you do that to me? Why would you hurt me like that, right? And it only hurts because, I shouldn't have done that. That really sucked. It's because we have this relationship. So now I'm not lying to my dad, not because fear or $20, right? Now I'm not lying to my dad because he's going to look me in the eye and say, you really can just lie to me? After everything I've done for you? After everything I've given you? And that becomes the ultimate motivation of the spiritual life, right? I'm not going to do this because of it. That's my dad, right? And I just love. And I want to be like him. I admire my dad. I admire my father, right? And I want to, he's peacemaker, humble, righteousness' sake, that's who he is. He forgives. He loves unconditionally. He doesn't judge. Okay. That's the guy I want to be. Good. Any other questions, comments? Thanks, George. Yes.
I feel like this is the fundamentals of our church. I don't know. I wish we were taught this in Sunday school earlier. I know it's very important to get to church on time and can't have communion after the gospel, and you have to do certain, all of the rules and regulations, and I know they're important, but at the end of the day, if you are doing those things and you don't genuinely love God and you don't have a relationship with him, like you said, I don't know if it means anything, but it doesn't seem like it does to me. Abuna Krotos says, fake it till you make it, and I agree with that. If your intention is to have a relationship with God and you're okay, I can't read, it's difficult for me, just try and the feeling will come. Baba Shenouda says that too. But, in terms of, teaching that your relationship with God, your intimate, personal relationship with God is the most important, I feel like I'm just starting to love God. I want to be with him. I want to go to church to be with him. I never wanted to do that when I was younger. I was why are we doing this? It was so, cold. Going to church was cold. It was never hot. It was never, I have this passion, desire to get to know my Father. It was just okay, I have to go to liturgy so that I can take communion so that we don't go to hell, or it's just, a routine. I don't know if this is because of, Egypt was colonized by the Arabs or what. I don't know where the love went, but I feel so many especially youth, would be saved from so much if like our one like goal in life was just to be closer to him and to genuinely love him, not be like a slave or like bound to him because Mama Baba said so, or a Tisoni or a Tunt said so at church.
Yeah, I mean, you raise a lot of good points, which is, and I think the first and foremost one is, as young people, right, your age, you all have to kind of make a decision for yourselves, right? I mean, your parents can force you to go to hymn class, right? But they can't force you to pray, right? They can force you to go do service, right? They can't force you to love. They can force you into church, right? But they can't make you have a relationship with God, right? So there's, and unfortunately, maybe sometimes our approach, and the approach a lot of times is just shove it down your throat, right? This is what we're doing. We're fasting the whole 50, like that sort of thing, right? That's just, to me, not a good approach. That's not what I would do as a father, and that's not what I would recommend any father do or any parent do, right? I would let children, I would let them see me, and then I would let them be, right? Now, obviously, if they're 5, right, we're going to church, kid, shut up and put on your clothes, right? But if they're 15, or 16, I'd be like, you make the call, right? And I would respect their autonomy and their independence, even to that degree, right? Even at that age. And so all of you guys have to make this decision, right? Am I going to just go through the motions, right? Or at some point you have to accept this faith that was foisted on you, when you're 40 and 80 days old, right? And you have to accept it for yourselves. And nobody can do that for you. Nobody can make you do that. That is one of the most personal things ever, right? And that is only you and God, right? And that comes at some point in your life. It doesn't have to come now. I talked to a guy 2 days ago. He's 46, lifelong in church, lifelong servant, lifelong everything, right? And he's like, I think I really prayed for the first time yesterday. We're talking big servant in the church, And he's like, I never opened myself up to God before, and I just did, yesterday, right? So, and I'm personally convinced that this happens at different points in everyone's life, right? So, we're all going for the star 16-year-old deacon boy, right? Who can, if you're good by 16, that's good. You don't do drugs. You won't, get a girl pregnant. Okay, good. Then we've saved him, right? But that's not necessarily when everyone's going to find that moment, right? And some of us are going to try a lot of things, right? And some of us are going to do all kinds of stuff. And we're going to look for happiness in this world, right? And not in God, right? And God's going to bring you back. And it maybe not when you're 20 or 30 or 40 or 50. Maybe when you're 60. I don't know. Right? But I'm personally convinced you will at some point. Right? But we all try, right? And we all give it our best to do whatever. I don't know if I answered your question or even you had a question. I just said things.
What's going to happen to us at some point in our life?
What's that?
Like if we know that at some point in our life we're going to try something or stray or whatever, and we want to get that experience, we know it's going to happen either way, isn't it just smarter to get out of the way earlier?
That's
what are you
love.
saying?
No, I understand what he's saying, but I don't think ultimately that's love. If
everyone is curious.
I genuinely love someone, and I know that I may stumble in my relationship with them, I'm not going to get it out of my system because I know it's bound to happen because I'm human. If I genuinely love Marchie and I have a commitment to him as him being my spiritual guide, my brother, my dad, my someone who I love, if I know in my heart that I, as a human, I'm probably going to flake on Marchie, or I'm probably going to lie to Marchie, or I'm probably going to slap him or hurt him or abuse him in some way. I'm not going to actively make the decision to do that just because I know it could happen, might happen because I'm a sinful person. If I genuinely love Marchie, I'm going to do everything in my power not to do that. Because God doesn't say that because you are human, because you are a sinner, you're like, yes, we're bound to sin, but it doesn't mean that we're always going to make the active, conscious decision to sin. If that makes sense. Like, if I love Marchie enough, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that he knows that and I show him my love. Because why would I go out of my way? Like, you know what? It kind of sounds fun to slap him, so I might as well get it out of my system so I don't do it again.
Just on the top. It'll actually ring.
As funny as it sounds, like, that shows how much you love God, that even though, like sex sounds really good, I know that I love God more than having sex, that I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that I don't. And no matter how cool, no matter how great, no matter how awesome it may sound, I know that God is going to have so much love in his eyes for me, and that's not why I'm doing it, but so much love in his eyes for me to not have sex because I love him. And that's the only reason why. That makes sense.
Does that answer your question? I guess it kind of depends on your perspective. So, you said, look, if I'm going to do something anyway, I might as well do it now, right? And so what the approach you're taking is kind of here's a bad thing, right? And you don't want me to do the bad thing. You don't want to do the bad thing. So I'll just do it now, get it out of the way, in a controlled environment, but that isn't relational, right? That's just transactional, right? Here's the list of bad things, right? And here's a list of good things. I'm doing all the good things. I can at least do one bad thing a month, right? Or maybe I should just knock them all out in a week, right? And just wake up in a coma, right? And then, but that's a transactional thought, right? It isn't. This isn't about. And unfortunately, we've reduced religion to that transactional approach, right? Which is, here's the list of bad things, right? And I'll argue to say, St. Paul says, all things are lawful to you, but not all things are helpful, right? So I don't know, there's a list of bad things. I don't know what that word means, right? And so I have a relationship with God, and so Sophia answered the question from a relational perspective, right? She said, well, no, but if you and Marchie are friends, I want to slap him, but, why would I slap him, right? You see what I'm saying? And so you took the God out of it, the human out of it, and you reduced it to the items, right? And she's saying, no, if you put the God back into it, all of a sudden it's personal, right? That's what Joseph said, in the Old Testament, right? When the Potiphar's wife tried to seduce him, right? The captain of the guard's wife tried to seduce him. He said, how can I commit this great evil before God who stands before me? Right? So even his response to her, right? She's obviously trying to seduce this young guy, right? And he's saying, God's before me. How can I commit this evil, right? So his answer was, I have a relationship, It isn't, this is wrong and this is right.
And I think the other way is is there even a list of good things? Especially right now, you're used to, I was used to just doing everything I was told to do. And there comes a point where you do it because you've decided to do it. And I think that process is a little different for each of us. But it only really happens if you decide to actually be honest with yourself a little bit. And most of the time we're not, because we're so myopic in our thinking and just we're not intentional. We're kind of just going sometimes. But when you actually stop and you, like he was saying earlier, you're asking, why am I doing this? Then if you're honest with yourself, you'll find truth. But it requires some form of effort. And then these questions are a little bit smaller.
Agreed. Yeah. Good? Yes.
I was gonna say too, it reminds me of relationship with food, because I definitely think about this a lot. But I don't know if you guys heard of Noom, but I tried it before, and it's a psychology, a way of turning your eating habits into a psychological cure, pretty much, and how you think about food. and they were saying, which is something I used to do, was like, if you eat a lot, or you like, let's say you do the wrong thing and you eat whatever you're not supposed to eat that day, you just keep going because you're like, well, I already messed it up for today, might as well like screw it. I'll start over tomorrow. And they kept telling me, like in the daily thing, they were like, if you do have a choice to stop, like once you've done whatever you've messed up, because if you keep going, it's going to be even worse. And so by having that, it's like you give yourself a little bit of room. You say, okay, I'm done now. And once you have that discipline and you have that strength, then you can like continue working on that instead of being like just falling into it so much more. And this really reminds me of it. It's like, it's definitely a sin, and it's like any type of sin, you want to be very intentional with what you're doing and like being very thoughtful. And so when you're in those moments and you're able to stop yourself, or you're able to recognize where you went wrong, and you're very insightful about like the little temptations or the little thoughts that you had that led to the action, it's very powerful, because then that's free. Like when you have the whole world set aside, or all of these temptations in front of you, and you're able to say no to them, then you have the power, and it's the Holy Spirit and God working in you, instead of it being like you being a slave to whatever you've been sinning for, falling into temptation for forever. And it takes forever to like get to that step, and you're always going to have something to struggle against. But I think that's the beauty of repentance. It's like I actually have this choice to turn away, and God is giving me that strength to do that.
Yep. Good. Any other questions? Okay. Glory be to God forever. Amen. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Anytime. Short drive.
You're on time. I'm very proud of you.
I was on time.